What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to another Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to be bringing you guys the ultimate guide to the upcoming Game Week 8. So this video might be slightly shorter than usual, and the main reason for that is that over this past international break, these past 2 weeks, I've created a whole bunch of videos that I think have addressed a lot of talking points in those. So go check those videos out if you guys haven't. But if you guys also don't know, I have activated the wildcard chip. So in this video, in the ultimate guides, I usually do a watch list, but I'm going to kind of cancel the watch list from this video just because on a wildcard, every single player is on your watch list. So it's a little bit useless to make a watch list on a couple of players. But I'll be bringing you guys updates and injury news over the past day that we have received from the press conferences. I would also recommend that you guys stay tuned to Twitter tomorrow because a large majority of the managers will be talking about their specific teams in tomorrow's press conferences. But the main talking points covered in this specific ultimate guide are going to firstly be 1 week punts. If you guys are on a wild card, maybe if you want a wild card in game week 9, want some 1 week punts, what fixtures should you guys be targeting? I'll be bringing you guys a top 5 fixtures that are predicted to score the most points in this upcoming game week. We're then going to move on to probably the main talking point of this video with TORRES potentially missing up to a month. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Which Man City midfielder should we be focusing on, and which Man City midfielder has the high ceiling over these next couple game weeks. The final talking point, as we usually always do on an ultimate guide, I'm going to be talking about captaincy. The first selection is going to be my own selection of players that I think will score the most points. And the second half of the captaincy debate is going to be on fantasy football fixes predicted points algorithm. And we're going to be focusing on the players that are predicted to score the most points. So theoretically are the best captaincy options to go for. So if that's something you guys are interested in, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So the first reminder, or the first talking point I just wanted to tell you guys about is going to be the early team news. So yes, every single game week there is a potential that we do get early team news, but in game week 8 I think it's going to be specifically important. And the reason for that is that Liverpool do take on Watford away, and we usually do get some nice early Liverpool news whenever they do play the first game of the game week. So I would keep my eyes over on Twitter just in case we do get some early team selections. And the reason why Liverpool are so important is not only do we own a lot of Liverpool options, I'm thinking a Trent, a Salah, and a Jota, but there has been some speculation and some injury news coming about, especially about Trent and also Diogo Jota. So with Mo Salah, I think he probably will play, probably one of the most nailed players to kind of go for in the current moment because of the form that he's been on, but it's always nice to get some security that your captain is definitely going to play, and at least if we do get early team news, we will have that security. But I'm going to focus on Trent and specifically Jota on this talking point because I think there are those of us who own Trent. If you're on a wild card, Trent out, Trent in has been quite a large debate, and if he's going to be back in the lineup against Watford, I think it's a no-brainer that he'll find himself into our FPL teams. The second player though, Diogo Jota, most of you guys probably own him. If you're on a wild card, I've seen a lot of managers actually want to take a 1 week punt on Jota. So it'll be nice to know if he's going to be back in the starting 11. If he's not, I would definitely not be bringing him in, and I would almost consider taking him out because I just think that's going to spoil the news for the upcoming game weeks. Jota, Firmino, we're going to have all this speculation about who's going to start, and I don't think you need that rotation headache in the current moment. So just keep your guys' eyes over on Twitter or just watch the deadline stream. I will be posting any news that I do get over on Twitter on that deadline stream. So hopefully I do see you guys there. And now going on to the update that we have received today from the press conferences and also from various journalists. So the first one is going to be about RAPHINHA, but this also kind of comes into account with any Brazilian options that you guys do own. I do think there are some other countries that also are going to be playing tomorrow, which is going to be Friday in the early hours of the morning. Most of them are going to be South American teams, but I'm going to focus on Brazil because they have kind of the highest ownerships out of all those specific countries. And the main one to focus on is going to be RAPHINHA because he's the most highly owned Brazilian option. It comes in with quite a high ownership, still a little bit of a differential at the current moment, but definitely more higher owned than an Edison and Alisson or Fabinho. So Bielsa did come out today. He usually is a manager that tells it how it is, gives us the truth, doesn't really hide behind the facts, and unfortunately didn't give us much update on RAPHINHA. He kind of told us that he's going to monitor how many minutes RAPHINHA plays tomorrow in the early hours of the morning because he is expected to start for Brazil, and obviously if he does play 90 minutes and then has to travel all the way back to the UK and play less than about 38 hours before the fixture, I think that's going to be quite a tough task to put on RAPHINHA. So there are some injury concerns. Obviously, if a player is not up to full fitness, maybe is recovering from an injury in a specific game, then they don't really want to risk that option. So I don't really know if RAPHINHA will start against Southampton, but my current consensus and my current advice would be I probably wouldn't be playing RAPHINHA, even if he does come off the bench. Southampton isn't the best fixture in the world at the current moment. They are quite a defensively assured team. So I think that I would probably bench RAPHINHA, and on my personal wildcard, I might be taking a 1 week punt just so that I don't have to deal with that kind of headache of benching him or not. But I would still recommend, if you guys are quite a conservative manager on a wildcard, just put RAPHINHA in your team. There's enough cheap options like a Shane Duffy, a Livramento that you can actually rely on to get you points off your bench. And now going on to probably the biggest news that came out of today. It actually wasn't really released by Man City. It was released by a Spanish journalist or a Spanish newspaper. And they came out with a headline that said, Ferran Torres has broken his foot and will miss up to a month. Now, Man City have since come up with a little bit of an update. They've said that he does have a small fracture. Now, the extent of that fracture hasn't been confirmed yet. And we obviously don't have an official announcement of a kind of a time back that Ferran Torres is expected to come back. So we just kind of have to rely on the Spanish newspaper right now. And they kind of have gone for 4 to 6 weeks. So obviously that's kind of massive news because we always worry about Man City rotation. Now with one less option to kind of pick, that theoretically means that the options that are currently in the squad have a better chance of starting. But Ferran Torres wasn't actually playing anyway in the preceding game weeks to game week 8, game week 7. He didn't even feature that much, only kind of featured at the start of the season. So it does still leave us with a little bit of a headache, but obviously a little bit easier now to pick an option that should hopefully play for Man City. So that's basically all the news that we did get today. But as I said, please focus on those press conferences tomorrow, as we have the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool news, Lukaku, Rudiger. We want to know if Trent's actually back and he's going to start against Watford. So all that jazz should hopefully be coming up tomorrow, and that'll settle some of our wildcard debates that we currently do have. So as I mentioned with RAPHINHA, my current thinking is on a wildcard. I might actually take a 1 week punt. I'm currently thinking about a Trossard from Brighton, but there are some other options, and we are going to be looking at the Fantasy Football Fixture Analyzer to pick the top 5 attacking rated fixtures. Now, while we are looking at the attacking rating fixtures, just because on a 1 week punt, the attack is a little more exciting, has a little bit of a higher ceiling than the defenders, and that's why I've favored the attack over the defense. So starting off with the number 1 fixture that Fantasy Football Fix has rated, it's going to be Arsenal versus Crystal Palace. Now, I don't think I would have probably rated this as the best fixture, as I think the likes of Burnley for Man City looks quite strong. We also have Liverpool versus Watford, which could be quite a high scoring affair. Then obviously I've already spoken about Brighton versus Norwich. But at the end of the day, I still do think this is quite a good fixture for Arsenal. Now, which Arsenal options are you guys going to go for? I reckon maybe a Smith Rowe, a Saka. Those are probably the 2 favorite options just because they are slightly cheaper than an Aubameyang or a Lacazette. But you guys can go for kind of any option here. And Fix is recommending this fixture if you guys are going to be taking a 1 week punt. The next fixture is a little bit of a surprise there. It's actually going to be Southampton versus Leeds. Now, Leeds, not the best defensive side in the Prem at the moment, but Southampton from an attacking point of view also haven't been that up to scratch, and their stats don't look that strong. If you guys did watch my previous draft or my team selection, I did still have Adam Armstrong, which just shows you that Southampton do have some good fixtures coming up, especially in game week 8. Man City, Spurs, and Brighton head up the next fixtures. A Heung-min Son for Spurs looks like a great option for game week 8. It's just whether game week 9 to 11, the fixtures don't look that strong. So are you going to kind of focus on game week 8, or are you going to kind of avoid Heung-min Son because of a tough run coming up? Man City versus Burnley is a no-brainer there. I think the last 3 home fixtures that Man City have faced Burnley have ended 5-0. So that doesn't tell you something. If you are one of those historic FPL managers that bases your decisions on the past, then this is definitely a fixture to focus on, even if you want to go for the captaincy options. But I do think if I was going to be taking a 1 week punt, I would probably be focusing on the Man City or the Brighton assets, just because I think those fixtures on paper look simply outstanding. And now going on to probably the biggest talking point of this video, and might be the reason that you actually clicked on this video, it's going to be which Man City midfielder should you guys be going for. Now this relates to if you guys are on a wild card, if you guys are on free transfers. I mean, these Man City fixtures, these next 3 look simply great, and I think that a lot of us want to jump on the Man City bandwagon. But I'm going to start off with just saying, do you actually want a Man City midfielder? I'm a little bit up in the air about this on a wild card. Obviously a big decision to kind of go for. Nice fixtures coming up, but is it worth dealing with that pep roulette? I'm kind of on the side right now that says it might not be worth going for a Man City midfielder, and the reason I'm saying that is that even with Ferran Torres out, there hasn't really been a player right now that we are expecting to start the next 3. And if I don't go for a Man City player that starts the next 3, I would probably be a little bit disappointed just because those fixtures look so good on paper. But nevertheless, I have decided to pick 4 mid-range options. I want to get this out of the way first. I have not picked Sterling or De Bruyne, and the simple reason for that is yes, these players might be more nailed, but they are more expensive, and I would 100% be going for De Bruyne if I could afford him, but I think the majority of us can't, and we're going to have to downgrade either Salah or Lukaku, and I'm not prepared to do that at the current moment. I also think Sterling provides a nice little alternative to De Bruyne just because with Ferran Torres out, Sterling has a history of potentially playing as a false 9, so that could be an option that you guys do go for, but as I said, comes in quite expensive, and I think I would personally prefer Heung-min Son to Sterling. But now going to the 4 options that I have selected. I think Mahrez is the most expensive, comes in about 8.7 if memory serves me right. Then we have Phil Foden that comes in at 7.9 alongside Jack Grealish. And then finally Bernardo Silva at 6.9. So the option that is a little bit out there is going to be Bernardo Silva. Actually a player that I think is going a little bit under the radar at the moment after starting quite a few games for Man City and getting quite a few minutes over these opening couple game weeks. Now with Bernardo Silva, he is probably going to be playing at that midfielder slot, so not really a winger or a false 9, but still has managed to get some returns and really does look to be on form. So this is an option if you guys maybe can't afford the other 3 that you guys can go for, but I might recommend some other options around that price point from different teams than going for him. I'm then going to be going on to Foden and Jack Grealish, where I think the majority of managers will go for. I just think that's because Mahrez is slightly more expensive than the others, and with Foden and Grealish, both have a good returns overall FPL wise, so I think a lot of managers kind of rely on them. But both these 2 options are a natural left winger, and that's kind of I think where the problem lies with choosing one of these 2. You got to kind of think on paper, if Grealish starts, Foden might not, unless Foden is going to play at that centre forward position or false 9 position, and if a Foden starts, maybe Jack Grealish will move to the midfielder department. Jack Grealish unfortunately has not really produced the goods for us this FPL season and hasn't really looked to be up to the standard that he was at with Aston Villa, and that just might be because Man City don't really rely on him too much to get that attacking threat. So I think personally, I probably would avoid Jack Grealish right now. I think I want to see a little bit more out of him at that 7.9 bracket to really kind of invest my money in him for the long-term future. But then going to Phil Foden, which was my kind of recommendation at the start of this international break. I really like Foden. I think he's, if not the best, one of the best young players, especially in the Premier League at the moment. And I just really wish that he played more, because I think if he plays, he gets the points. We saw in the kind of valuation video we did in this season's preseason, where we saw that if Foden starts, he has one of the best kind of points per minutes played in FPL. But unfortunately with Foden, he seems to be quite rotated, and I think with some tough Champions League fixtures coming up, Pep might rest him for those Champions League fixtures as he did last season. But I do think that I personally prefer Foden to Jack Grealish, just because if he does play, I'm expecting him to get more points than Jack will, and that's why I think currently he's my favorite option to go for. But if you guys want to take a 1-week punt, I would recommend Riyad Mahrez, just because he loves playing against Burnley, and I think on paper he's probably going to start. And the reason for that is that Gabriel Jesus is probably not going to feature for Man City just because he is on Brazilian national duty. We spoke about RAPHINHA. These South American players are going to come back on Saturday, and they might not have enough time to recover for the Man City game against Burnley at home. And I don't really think Pep has to risk Jesus. I think he has enough options on the bench that can do a perfectly good job, and that's where Mahrez comes in. So Jesus has been playing as a right winger, and that's the exact position that Mahrez kind of favors, and that's why I think that Mahrez will start against Burnley on that right wing slot. And if you guys want to take a 1-week punt or maybe a short-term punt, I think that Mahrez is currently the City midfielder that I would go for. But let me know in the comments down below who you guys are going for. Are you kind of stretching the budget, going for Sterling or De Bruyne? Are you going for a Foden or a Mahrez? Or are you going a bit differential and going for a Bernardo Silva? And now going on to the final talking point of the Ultimate Guide, as we usually do, it's going to be all about captaincy. So as I always go for, the first options are going to be my own selections. These are my top 3 options that I would personally be captaining if I had to select a top 3. The first one, a little bit of a no-brainer there. It's going to be Mo Salah against Watford. I honestly think the only thing against Mo Salah is going to be that early kickoff. And if you guys aren't superstitious, as I'm not, I'm perfectly fine with captaining the Egyptian, because I think it's a great fixture to go for. I guess there is the new Watford manager bounce. There is a kind of a new manager bounce that is in FPL. We usually don't really favor teams that are playing managers that have just come into the Prem, and I do think Watford could have this as they are playing at home. But I personally am going simple here. I don't want to overthink the captaincy this week. I think Mo Salah's a no-brainer, and that's how I'm going to be going for him. We then have 2 options that might be slightly more differential, but might have slightly higher ceilings. The first one I definitely don't think so. I think it's going to be Lukaku against Brentford. Brentford overall have been quite solid, and especially because this is an away game for Chelsea, I think this might be quite a close one. And that's why I think the ceiling might not be as high on Lukaku as Mo Salah, but I still do think he's a good option if you don't really want to go for the Egyptian. But But the final option, my differential option, I definitely think one of my favorites to go for is going to be Kevin De Bruyne against Burnley. Now, Man City, I've spoken about the history. They always love to thrash Burnley at home. And when I've looked at the Burnley defensive injuries, looked at the Burnley defense this Premier League season, I can honestly see this being quite a high scoring affair for Man City. So De Bruyne coming off quite a good fixture for Belgium. Unfortunately, they did come in that third and fourth playoff and didn't come in the first and second or the final of that Nation League. But I think that De Bruyne looked quite strong, especially in the first half of that playoff or that semi-final game. And I think that he's going to continue that form against Burnley on the weekend. So also from a differential point of view, not many people do own De Bruyne. So if you want to go for a differential captain, a more exciting captain, I do think that Man City have the high ceiling in terms of goals this game week. And now going on to the Fantasy Football Fix Predictor tool, and these are going to be the 3 highest predicted point scorers in FPL for Game Week 8. Now I want to give you guys a disclaimer here, Sadio Mane is actually the 2nd highest predicted point scorer, but I don't really like to stack teams on here, I like to go for 3 different options, so that's why he has not been fitted in. But as you guys can see, a little bit of a no-brainer, as I mentioned with Mo Salah, predicted to score the most points, is probably the most informed player in the Prem at the moment, and has a pretty good fixture on paper. So Mo Salah predicted to score the most points by quite a high margin, and that's why I don't really want to overthink this captaincy decision, and that's why I'll be going for him as my captain. But the next 2 are a little bit surprising. The first one from Man City's point of view is going to be Diaz in the defense. So 6.3 points, basically what they're saying here is that Diaz is guaranteed almost to get a clean sheet, or they're predicting him to get a clean sheet, and I would honestly back that, as Burnley haven't been that great from an attacking point of view. So if you guys want to go for a defensive captain, then maybe go for a Diaz, but not this week. I think it's too risky, especially to go for a defender when you have a player like a Mo Salah, Lukaku, and a Ronaldo floating around. Talking about Ronaldo, he's predicted to score the 3rd highest points, and I just think that's because Ronaldo has the hype, he has the stats to back him up. I mean, he's just kind of a shot merchant, getting so many shots in the Prem at the moment, so he's bound to kind of score in every single fixture, and against Leicester, they are predicting him to score. So this could be a little bit of a debate if you guys still do own Ronaldo. Maybe if you want to go for Ronaldo over Lukaku on your wildcard as a bit of a differential, but I think unfortunately Ronaldo's stock has fallen quite a bit after him getting benched against Everton. But let me know in the comments down below who you guys are captaining. Are you going kind of differential? Are you not going Salah? If you're going differential, who are you going for? Hopefully it's not Ruben Diaz, as I would probably favor another option. But this is basically wrap the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did, and subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. My current wildcard draft is exactly the same as my last team selection. The only kind of difference is that I'm currently considering a 1-week punt instead of RAPHINHA, and I did mention Trossard from Brighton. But hopefully I do see you guys in the deadline stream coming up on Saturday morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you guys are around the world, as that's where I'll be finalizing my wildcard team after we hopefully get some early Liverpool team sheet news. I'm going to be signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.